Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show.
But I honestly, I think that's to me, that's part of the problem.
Yeah. See, I have notes about totally different parts of this email. So you clearly picked up other stuff that you are triggered by.
I hate that word.
I know. That's why I put scare quotes around it.
I hate that word. No, yeah. I mean, we pulled out the part of the email. Obviously, it was the podcast ideas. What is what do I do? I'm a middle-aged guy. How do I start this program? Where do I start?
But everything he wrote to you, he wrote to you a long thing,
yes,
presumably because all of it was important to him.
Yes.
But I think where you start also ties in with how you feel about yourself and what you think you can do and where you can start. And if you just say F your feelings about it, you've lost the person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part I liked, but I like that description.
Yeah. Yeah. And they did.
Let Rebecca address the part that she has strong feelings about.
Hi, everybody. We are back again for another 5x3 Radio podcast. And we have a very special guest today on our podcast who informed me a year ago when we first started this podcast that he would never, ever be on our podcast because he doesn't like to hear himself talk. Or maybe he does, but
I know the feeling. But somehow you made me be.
I made you. I was able to twist your arm, and now you can't get enough of it. No, but my husband Diego Sokolinski is here with us to discuss an excellent topic that we received from a listener. So all those listeners out there, we do take your topics seriously. We do take it, and we take them into consideration. And this was a really excellent one that was sent to us from a listener out in Minnesota. And we brought Diego on to discuss. He came up with quite a lengthy email to us and addressed a few topics that we would like to cover. And Rebecca has part of the email.
We don't have to start with.
I think we could. I think let's go through it because the last part of the email is quite. That's really the topic he wanted to talk about. But in his email, there were other subjects that he covered that you read into and wanted to think about, and Diego thought about, and I thought about. So I feel like we could discuss that and then kind of transition into, to the topic at hand. So you want to explain a little bit about what she's shaking her head.
Well, perhaps you should read some of the email.
I
was going to say, let's read some of the email. Yes, let's read some of the email.
Not just what was I interested in, but what's in here.
Yeah, read some of the highlights.
Let's unpack this.
Let's unpack the email because it was a great email.
Yeah.
So, which means everybody listening, send us your questions. We do want to hear from you. So let's pull up the email. I pulled up what I wanted to obviously discuss, but do you want me to go ahead and read the email, or do I just pull up bits and pieces?
I think it's too long. I guess basically what we're looking at is a listener who's highly educated, and maybe is saying he started his strength journey late in life, didn't necessarily consider himself to be a quote unquote fit person when he got started. He maybe did some things with barbells when he was younger, but didn't really get serious about barbells until his 40s. So kind of where does a person who does not consider themselves to be fit begin with this process?
Yeah,
was kind of the overall gist of it.
Right. And let's backtrack because in the beginning he actually just focuses on things that we've already talked about in the podcast. So maybe we can just quickly go over that. We spoke about teaching. I spoke about teaching dancers and training dancers. He was thrilled about hearing that. He mentioned that at when he was a resident at Hopkins, a lot of his patients in the eating disorders clinic were 85-pound ballerinas. And, it was hard for him to discuss that because, as he said, ballet and modeling communities won't take advice from, quote unquote fat doctors like me. That's his word, not mine. His wife is a doctor as well, and she followed him into strength training. And his sister as well. And his sister went to a gym. I don't know how long ago. I guess maybe, I don't know. He doesn't say, but she had some issues while she was there. And Rebecca, you kind of keyed into that section of the podcast, which was about your feelings.
But Emily, I mean, I'm thinking of that really strictly in terms of how does a person who perceives themselves as not fit, or who maybe from an objective standpoint isn't fit, how does a person get started? Like the comment that most podcasts about getting strong or losing weight or being fit are presented by fit people for fit people.
No, yeah. So, but I'm right now I'm unpacking the email like paragraph by paragraph. You mentioned talking about
that bit there. I didn't like I sort of flicked back to that when I got to the final paragraph. Okay. Yeah. It was like, that's part of the problem. Right.
About the feelings?
Yeah. Like, I mean, this is going to sound all super jumbled if we go through it this way, but like, to me, where you get a person started who considers themselves not to be fit, like their feelings about it, their emotions about it, their sense of their own limitations has to be addressed. And you can't just say like, F your feelings about this, add 5 pounds.
Right.
You've got to meet the person where they are. And if you're talking about getting a person as strong as possible, as quickly as possible, the as possible also encompasses their feelings towards the process, their sense of their own limitations, what they're willing to hear from you. Like even the example with the 85-pound ballerinas, like what information they're willing to hear from a person is part of the process of getting a person as strong as possible, as quickly as possible. Sometimes there's limitations that aren't just physical, that don't just have to do with like, can you produce enough force to move this weight through space? There's like, do you think you can?
Got it.
Well, there's a weird dualist interpretation of the lifter here underlying this discussion, that somehow the lifter is the set of muscles and bones and ligaments, and then separately there is their psychological component. I'm sure neither one of you will be surprised that I don't take a dualist interpretation to the universe. So no, I mean, that person is their feelings as much as they are their muscles or
absolutely
bones.
Yeah.
And those two are inextricably linked. And as a coach, you have to treat them as a unit.
Right.
If you don't treat them like that, then you're missing half the person, and that's likely to not lead to compliance over time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, I think before we get into the topic at hand, he had his sister training somewhere, and she came in with sciatica, with radicular foot numbness, and it got exacerbated by deadlifts. There was this feeling of like, you have to keep adding 5 pounds. We don't care that you something's bothering you, because it's add 5 pounds or else. And she's afraid of deadlifts because her sciatica was, it's gone now, but she kind of is afraid of training. So there's that feeling of like meeting the person where they are. That person wasn't met.
Yeah, that's an example of you coached the muscles and tendons, but you did not coach the whole person.
Exactly. And then you lose somebody as a result of that.
You treat them just as the mechanical model and don't recognize that there actually is more to them than the stick figure.
Yeah. I was it a month or two ago, I had this couple came. The guy had come to us for a camp, I think, and maybe I worked with him one-on-one a couple times after that. And then he brought his girlfriend, and I worked with both of them on a Saturday. And she had just come back from, I think it was a knee surgery, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Recently, I mean, not just come back but she had a knee surgery. And my entire emphasis during that training session for her was just for her not to be scared to move.
That's it.
I didn't care anything about the weight.
Mm-hmm.
We took the lightest possible thing we could do. We reduced the range of motion as much as we could to make her comfortable, and then slowly over the course of a training session, increase the range of motion, while she was still comfortable with it. And then, he was asking me, because he was quote unquote going to coach her. They're going to train together after that.
Such a fun adventure.
Yes. So he was asking me about her programming, and I was like, I don't care if she doesn't add a single pound to this for the next 2 months. Your job is to make her not scared to do the movements.
That's it.
And we heard from them recently that things were going well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the coaching was primarily aimed at the feelings, not at the muscles and tendons.
Yeah. And then unfortunately in this situation, the sister is still lifting, but she's afraid of some, basic movements, as he said, and one being the deadlift, because there's a fear of like, my sciatica will return. I'm going to hurt myself. And it's good that she's still lifting, but it's, she wasn't treated as a whole person. Rather she was treated as, we don't care. The program calls for another 5 pounds. You're going to lift another 5 pounds. So, how is you as a coach? So,
this reminds me, Diego, of what you always say, something along the lines of like, it's your job as the coach, or if something doesn't work out right, like what did you as the coach do wrong? Like if you're not paying attention to anything more, like that's easy programming, add 5 pounds,
mm-hmm.
right? It's not that simple, right? There's an art to coaching. And if you just kind of add 5 pounds, like here's the easy answer, you're kind of oversimplifying it.
Well, to be fair to the add 5 pounds camp, this particular woman was a woman in her 50s, just out of knee surgery. So she was not the average trainee that seeks advice from the add 5 pounds camp. If I'm 22, male, weigh 200 pounds, you can add 5 pounds. That's pretty safe advice. It's not going to go that wrong.
You're making a good distinction there too, because like what you're describing as the typical add 5 pounds camp is not who comes to 5x3. That's not who, like, we're sort of, people who are part of maybe what you would call the more general population are coming to 5x3, not the people who are always looking to like.
Well, we do have those. We have our clients.
You got a mix.
Yeah, we have the clients who we add 5 pounds, and we keep adding 5 pounds every session, and then we have clients who we can't add 5 pounds on, the next session because they're simply squatting their body weight right now, or they're still learning how to, to hold the bar for the press. So we're going to probably keep just, drilling the movement pattern, the movement for that. And then we have people who, of course, we can add 5 pounds, 10 pounds, and are just taking right along.
Well, Rebecca has a good point that, there's a sampling bias. We've discussed this before. When the people who seek coaching at the level and the pricing that we offer are not the people who are comfortable doing it on their own.
Right.
So there are a lot of people who are comfortable doing it on their own, and those people will not come to us. So there's definitely a bias, selection bias in the people we see. And that's okay.
True.
That's fine.
True. But even in that camp, we're not doing the add 5 pounds with everybody who walks through the door. We take into consideration the whole person and their needs and their abilities. Right. So
although, for most people who are not injured or not particularly old or particularly frail, we kind of do add 5 or 2.5 pounds.
Yeah.
So, that's not unreasonable advice as long as you put some context around it. Exactly.
So, he enjoyed the pain episode, part 3. He said for his sister when she was going through that kind of scare the deadlift phase. So he was happy to have that to refer her to. So let's get into his actual question. It's quite loaded. But
as opposed to the add 5 pounds part that we just discussed.
Well, no, this is
we just breezed through that.
This one is
it's not loaded.
You asked for podcast ideas. Here's one from me. He says, it seems that most strength fitness podcasts are done by fit people for fit people, but I started my journey late. I dabbled in barbell training in my teens with some ex-cons. My dad was a criminal defense attorney. I didn't squat until my mid-30s and didn't get serious about barbell training until my 40s. Most podcasts talk about weight loss and fitness are talking to people who are trying to lose 5 or 10 pounds or trying to get from 12% body fat to 8%. But there are a ton of midlife crisis guys who are wearing size 44, 42 pants. When they look to start getting in shape, there's a sea of misinformation. They don't even know where to start. And then he talks a little bit about what, he tried some yoga, and then he discovered a gym while he was in Alaska and tracked his food, and he lost 35 pounds. Then he moved and gained it back, started doing 20 rep squats, tried fasting, tried keto, macros, blah, blah, blah. And ends up saying, what I'm saying is this: if a smart guy like me with 2 biochemistry degrees and a doctorate can get that shit lost, what the heck does your average untrained person do? What's the most important thing for an untrained middle-aged person? Start with LP, lose the weight before considering LP. If you have to lose 50 or 70 pounds, do you periodize such weight loss? How often do you adjust and reassess your goals? What does success look like? So it's quite a loaded, topic. So we thought we would try to unpack that today and kind of break it down to true. What does somebody who wants to get in shape, who's in their mid 40s, who maybe has weight to lose, but wants also to get strong and get healthy, where do they begin? Where do they start? Do they start with losing weight? Do they start with training? Is it a combination of both? Where do we go from there? And what's the best program to do? I mean, it's a great question. It's just that there's a lot to it.
This is a great question, and there is a lot to talk about. And what I'm super curious about is which piece of this got Diego on the show.
It's the whole thing.
Which piece of this was so compelling to Diego that he was like, okay, fine, I'll finally do the podcast. What do you have to say, Diego?
What do you have to say?
I've been waiting all week.
Rebecca's been waiting all week for this. She thought this was an anniversary gift to me.
Drop some wisdom on me, Diego.
I think it's a well-written question with a lot of context around it. And I think it's somebody honestly describing a real problem. It's not a trolling question. It's not, so it's an honest, good, solid question written from a place of vulnerability and humility, right? It's like, I'm this is confusing. How do I unpack this? It's just a good question.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
So the honesty drew you in.
Well, he's gained weight, he's lost weight. He's,
And the fact that there is not a single correct answer to this question.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's probably part of the answer is that, and I took some notes, but it's part of the answer is that there isn't a single answer to this. And probably part of the problem is that there are a lot of people out there trying to convince you that there is one answer and that it's the one they have. And
I think that's where, like, to me, the description of the F your feelings, add 5 pounds comes in, because that's a very simple one answer. Mm-hmm. And to me, I'm looking at this and I'm like, there's so many different places that a person could reasonably start. And it kind of comes down to, you got to consider the body with the emotions, figure out what is a reasonable starting place for that person. So you can't say like, F your feelings, just do what I said. You have to sort of like sometimes you have to convince a person that they're able to do something before they'll even give it a try. Like you're describing with your client the other week, even getting her to buy into a place where she could move in a certain way and not hurt her knee. Right. So
so before we launch into this, I'd like the standard disclaimer, since there are some medical bordering questions on this. That none of us are physicians.
Nope.
I may be a doctor, but I am not a medical professional. So that this is just our opinion and not medical advice.
Yes. Check with your doctor before doing any exercise program.
Yes, exactly.
Any exercise or nutrition program.
Yes, there you go. Good.
I said that.
That's number one.
Yes. I told Jan that when she came to see me before her surgery. I said, she goes, well, what do I do? I said, well, before you come back to me, you check with your doctor, see if strength training is right for you.
Well, because he's asking here, I mean, right? He's saying, if you have to lose 50 or 70 pounds,
right?
What do? Do you start with lifting weights? Do you start with losing weight? Do you periodize? I mean, that's an important question. And part of the answer is, why do you have to lose 50 or 70 pounds? Do you have to lose 50 or 70 pounds because your doctor is telling you that that is a health hazard for you? Or do you have to lose 50 or 70 pounds because it's an aesthetic consideration, right? I don't discard aesthetic considerations. I train in good part for aesthetic reasons. So I'm okay with that, but it matters, right?
Right.
If your blood pressure is dangerous, your cholesterol, whatever, medical things are bad, and your doctor tells you that losing weight is the way to fix that, well, then do what your doctor says.
Right.
Right. Then losing weight is the primary short-term training goal. That doesn't tell you how to lose the weight. We can talk about that. But if the doctor says losing weight is it, then lose the weight. If you're doing it for aesthetic reasons, then we could have a different conversation.
Yeah, that's an important distinction.
Yeah. Generally, when we get people coming at the gym, we don't talk to them about, and I know you guys have talked about this before, we don't talk to them about losing weight. We don't initiate that discussion. It's not up to us to tell somebody they should lose weight. But if they come and they say, I want to lose weight, then obviously we try to work with them on that goal. So here would be the same thing. I think we, as a coach, you'd be responsive to this. You would not be the one initiating this weight loss concept, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It would be a response to their question as to whether or not they should and how to go about doing it.
They would come to you, right? And they would say, hey, Emily, I'd like to lose 50 or 70 pounds. And you would probably go, tell me more. Okay. Why would you like to do this? What's the motivation behind wanting to lose? That's a significant amount of body weight.
Right.
Why are you wanting to lose that? And if they come back saying, hey, my blood pressure is this, and my doctor says I need to lose 50 pounds, well, then you know what the reason is. So that's the first thing I would say, as to what the order of operations is. And then there's the other person who just says, hey, I don't feel good in my own body. I want to lose 50 pounds. But there's no, the doctor is not hounding me to do so. So that's probably a different situation. We were talking about this over dinner the other day, and I think both you and I essentially had the same reaction.
So you guys brainstormed without me.
He was talking. I was eating chips and listening and telling him to try to remember that, because
that sounds like really good. The opposite. You're really, usually the talker.
it was really good. What he was saying, I kept saying, hold that thought. Keep that in your head. And as I ate.
Oh, I can improvise.
Yeah. I mean, we do
but I think we were both on the same page. What would I do if I had to lose 50 pounds? Because I've never been overweight. Right. So I don't, I'm not speaking from personal experience here. But if I had to lose 50 pounds, well, first of all, if I personally was 50 or 70 pounds overweight, my first reaction would be to freak out and do whatever I could to get that weight down. So just like everybody else, my personal reaction would be to try to do it as quickly as possible with no regard to the best way to go about it. However, right? I mean, because it's different, right? When you are I don't train the way I tell my clients to train, right? I need somebody to tell me not to be dumb. So I'm sure that I would have that same reaction, right? If I want this off of me as quickly as I can. But if I was working with somebody who has 50 or 70 pounds to lose and without a medical indication to do so, or even maybe with, I think we would probably argue that almost as important as that person losing that weight is that person retaining as much of their their muscular body weight as possible through the process.
Right.
Because ideally what you end up after losing 50 or 70 pounds is you with as much as possible of the muscular body weight you have right now and as much of the adipose body weight gone, right? That's better for metabolic reasons, better for, every other reason, right? So that's what we like to do. And as far as we know, the only way to grow or maintain muscle mass is resistance training, other than exogenous, steroids, is resistance training. So we would probably get that person resistance training. That's the first thing we would do. And I think you guys talked about this. We talk about this all the time. The most important thing would be for that person to develop better habits.
Yep.
And we have to start somewhere. We have to start with some habits. We cannot start with all habits at the same time because that usually doesn't take. People have a limited amount of willpower available to them at any given time. And if you spread it around 5 different goals, you accomplish none of them. Mm-hmm. So you have to use that limited willpower for 1 or 2 things at a time. And things get easier after a while. So you need less willpower to maintain them than you need to develop them. So we start by investing the willpower first in developing a training habit. Mm-hmm. And we can talk at length as to exactly what that training look like. But regardless of the training itself, I think we invest as much willpower as is available first in developing a training habit, because we know that we're going to need resistance training in order to maintain muscle mass. And it takes some time to cement a habit, and it takes some time to learn how to lift weights, right? So we would probably have that person just focus on that for a little while, where a little while is probably a few months, right? 3 months, 4 months, I don't know, something like that. If somebody's 50 or 70 pounds overweight, they likely haven't done that over the course of 3 to 5 months. It's more like 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take a little while to get that weight off. So we can probably afford to develop a training habit up front, invest a few months on that.
Right.
And once that person has developed that habit and that is cemented and it doesn't require a constant investment of a high amount of willpower to maintain, then we can take some willpower out of the piggy bank to start on nutrition habits. Yeah. Start with those. And then, try to get that cemented over however long it takes to get those habits cemented. And which ones they are, it depends on the person. You often like to work on protein consumption, or you like to work on meal, consistency, or whatever it is that the person is lacking in their nutritional arsenal, so to speak. And just apply more of the willpower to that set of habits while keeping the training, with as little mental effort as possible.
Right.
And ideally at that point, you get at least those 2 things going. And now maybe you're 6 or 8 months into this intervention, and the person now is a competent enough lifter and has a training habit developed and has started becoming a competent eater. And they've probably started losing weight. Maybe not at a dramatic rate, but they've started losing weight. But more importantly, now they have habits to fall back on. They have a baseline. And this is what we were talking about over dinner the other day. Mm-hmm. A person who is 70 pounds overweight, their baseline exercise regime is sitting on the couch. And their baseline nutritional regime is eating pizza 3 meals a day, or convenient, takeout or whatever. That's the baseline, right? That's what they're going to fall down back to if something happens. But if we get these people to a baseline of getting into the gym 3 times a week, doesn't matter what they do at the gym, just get into the gym 3 times a week. And then we get them into a baseline of eating 100 grams of protein a day and some vegetables every day. Mm-hmm. Well, that becomes their baseline. Mm-hmm. So now when that person falls, has to default back down to something, they'll default to a habit of, at least I'm going to show up at the gym and do something 3 times a week. And at least I'm going to get some vegetables and protein in me every day. And that's a hell of a better baseline than you had before. right? And because that now doesn't require almost any willpower because you've invested it up front, one at a time. And I think that you start bootstrapping from there. Mm-hmm. And for some people, that may be it. For some people, that may be the end of what you're going to do because they have lives and children and careers and other stuff that requires willpower. And this is all you're going to get. And other people are going to catch a bug from, going to the gym and getting stronger or getting leaner or seeing muscles or whatever. And that's going to become exciting. They're going to do it. And that's the people who are, the in shape people talking to other in shape people about dropping below 10% body fat. But for the rest of the population, if you can get them into a habit of, doing some resistance training and possibly some cardio 3 times a week and eating some vegetables and upping the protein intake, you've done the Lord's work. And that's probably all you need to do. Right?
Yes. I mean, I don't know if we've talked about, did we talk about this? Like, did we ever do a nutrition podcast? Do we talk about habits?
No.
And because that's a big mantra of mine. I mean, when people come to the gym and they'll say to me, I like to lose some weight. I say, okay. I said, we're going to first create the habit of you getting to the gym here 2 to 3 days a week, right? You want to get stronger. That's what we can do here. We can also help you with nutrition too. But first you need to prove to me that you can show up 2 to 3 times a week, every week for 2 to 3 months. Because I think they say it takes 2 weeks to build a habit. I find that it takes at least 3 months for people to see a change in their body awareness or, in their confidence. And they may not have changed in their body, but definitely there'll be a change in their body if they start strength training. But they will see after 3 months where, if they've been consistent, that they have certainly made enough progress with themselves that now they can focus on something else, right? It's become habit, their training. They're in there 3 days a week. They're logging what they're doing. And this is something that I just thought about when I started this program, or I started about 11 years ago training, that I'd never really written down what I had done. I never thought about what I was doing at the gym. I was just at the gym. But when you actually take into consideration what you are doing and you write down the exercises you're doing, the reps you're doing, how heavy it was, how light it was, how it was easier than last week, it becomes much easier for you to then, when you start to focus on losing weight, or even start to focus on gaining weight, but losing weight, you've already started tracking your training program. You've already started tracking your training schedule. All of a sudden, when someone says, write down what you eat every week, that becomes really easy because you've done it already for 3 months. And when I equate that to people, I say, you starting to track your food, or you starting to focus on how you eat, your meals, your protein, think about what you've just done for 3 months. You can do it. It becomes a lot. I found that it was much easier for me to start to do that, to kind of consistently see and write down what I was eating, because I've been doing it in the gym. I started doing that with my own training program. So I found that when people have started to focus on their eating habits, they do have an easier time once they've started training prior to that, right? Because they've already gotten into that habit of showing up, putting the work in, writing down what they've done. Now it's the same. Now they have to just transition that to, what am I eating for lunch? What's dinner? What's breakfast? Am I eating breakfast? Do I not like to eat breakfast? Okay, how am I going to make my lunch and my dinner, enough for me to start to meet my goal of losing weight? I've started working with a few people past couple of years, and it's the consistency is there once they've established a good training regimen. So I absolutely think that starting, as Diego was saying, starting in the gym first, just showing up and getting in there no matter what it is, and write down what you're doing, will allow you to have an easier time when you start to now focus on how you're eating. And they'll probably be still losing weight anyway. They're probably starting to start to eat better just because they need the energy to show up at the gym. So there's kind of like that consistency and habit there that then leads into the consistency and habit of eating, because their bodies start to feel better anyway.
Starting at the gym also. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, I think any of the three of us are probably going to say starting at the gym, because that's sort of where we are. That's where the people are going to find us, is at the gym. And more specifically, I think at 5x3, it's a strength and conditioning gym. People who are going to 5x3 have already gone through some work, some mental, maybe gone over some mental hurdles to decide that they want to go to a gym and start with some sort of physical activity. This doesn't happen often to me in the commercial gym where I'm working, but I'm also like and you are too, Emily, like a PN, precision nutrition level 1 coach, right? So in theory, someone could show up at the commercial gym, which also has like a health center to it, and want to focus specifically on a nutritional change. That doesn't happen with me often, but I think either way, whether we're talking about starting out with somebody training in the gym or starting out with somebody making a nutritional change, what you're both saying and what I'm thinking as well is you want the person to establish some sort of new habits or consistency, set a new base level, something that they can commit to and complete successfully, so that they've got some building blocks of success on which they can then stack other changes, whether the first step is actually a nutritional change or a showing up at the gym and building strength, probably doesn't matter so much as finding one thing that you can 100% say, yes, I can get that done, and then do it, and then build from there. And somebody shows up, it's easy to put on your calendar or your your schedule, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour, and then once you're there, follow the directions that your coach gives you. So that's sort of like, for a lot of people, I think, an easier place to start than this sort of nebulous outside of that appointment. You've got 23 other hours where you have to sort of maybe do one thing or another, or not do one thing or another. That's a clearer place to start, and I think a clearer place for people to feel a sense of success going forward to make those other changes.
Yeah, I think that from my point of view, there are metabolic reasons why I would have persons start with the training intervention, and there are psychological reasons why I would do that. Some which overlap with the ones you just gave, and some that are separate. I mean, metabolically, we know that person needs resistance training not to lose the muscle that they have.
Right.
People that are 50 to 70 pounds overweight usually are carrying a fair bit of muscle mass, unless they're very old and very overweight, in which case they might be very sarcopenic. But if you have, like in the case of the person writing this email, somebody who's in their 40s, a man in their 40s who's 70 pounds overweight is usually carrying a lot of muscle around under the fat. So they're not just fat, they're big. You just can't see the big because they're fat. And I think we need to make every possible effort to hold on to the muscle. And we know we need resistance training for that. So if we start with a nutritional intervention and that person loses 30 pounds, and of those 30 pounds, 15 are muscle, that's bad.
Right.
So that's metabolic reason why I would prefer to start with the resistance training intervention. Psychologically, I think, and again, I'm not speaking from personal experience, but I have spoken with a good number of people who are overweight that we work with. I think that people who are significantly overweight have a very emotional relationship to their eating. Many of them also have emotional relationships to going to the gym because they feel like they don't belong or they have had bad experiences. But overwhelmingly, they have a much stronger emotional relationship with food than they have with exercise. Some of them may have never exercised, so they essentially have no relationship with exercise. So in terms of willpower investment necessary to make a change, changing their eating will require more willpower because it's something that they're very emotionally invested in. And I would rather start from the intervention that requires the least investment, because that's the one that's most likely to stick. So those would be my reasons for starting with the training intervention. That being said, if they can start from the other end and they can stick to that, that's great too. Whichever one sticks.
I'm thinking of like a lot of, any videos I've seen or stories I've seen of people sharing their successes with weight loss. And often it starts with, I started going to the gym. I'll read that. I'll see the video of the person at the gym, and whether they're training with a barbell or they're just doing the machines, then doing the circuit, they're doing it consistently. And then over time, they also start to change their eating habits. But it always starts with, I started at the gym. And we know that exercise is not the number one thing for weight loss. Obviously, changing your nutrition habits is number one. But there is that, you're right, there's that psychological, starting somewhere where it's easier to start there because I don't have a connection. I don't have an emotional connection with that than this. It's almost like putting that to the side for a while until I can get a handle on this. And almost every success story that I've ever seen, like video of a person making a really good substantial change in their bodies, has been this. I started walking a mile. Then I started walking 2 miles. Then I started walking 3 miles. Now I go to the gym. Now I started the resistance training. So for some people, it's just a matter of just getting them up and walking around the block, getting the exercise because they've been sitting on the couch. Then the next step is for them to get inside. If they have someone who's telling them, look, you need resistance training, they'll do that. Hopefully they do. They are. And for most people, it is that they do have that aspect of their training. It's not just all cardio, which ends up making you a smaller version of yourself with no muscle. And with that term skinny fat, where you're just, now that's worse than maybe when you had more fat and you had more muscle as well. So making sure that anyone who, whether they have a coach or not, having to help them understand that resistance training is going to be a much more important part of this weight loss, journey than just getting on the treadmill. Although getting on the treadmill is a good start too, if you've never had any attachment to exercise in the first place.
What you're saying is consistent with what we know from the literature as well, that interventions that are additive, that are positive, tend to be more effective than interventions that are subtractive or negative.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
So dietary interventions where I tell somebody not to eat carbs tend to be less successful than dietary interventions where I tell somebody to eat more vegetables.
Right.
And starting a training activity is an additive intervention. It's I'm giving the person to focus a positive goal, as opposed to the goal being avoiding a certain behavior or avoiding a certain food.
Right.
And we just know from the literature that those types of interventions tend to be more successful.
And they also just the feeling of achieving a positive goal, I think is more reinforcing than achieving a negative goal, I lost some weight on the scale, not as fulfilling, I think, in a lot of times as I was able to do 100-pound deadlift or something, or I was able to run an extra mile or whatever the thing is. I don't know. It just tends to, I think, for a lot of people, be more positive.
Yeah. No, but you have to keep in mind too. It is, we I try to encourage people to assess the goals, the positive things they've done in the gym, the amount of weight they're lifting now, what used to be a warm up is, what used to be a hard set is now a warm up for them. Look at just overall, the confidence you have in your body, but you don't want to negate that they want to lose that weight. Then you have to encourage them to, okay, you need to weigh yourself 2 or 3 times a week. We need to look at that number and assess from there. There are plenty of people who don't ask us about weight, about eating, and may have weight to lose. But that's not for me to say. My goal is to make you stronger. My goal is to make you a healthier person. And within that, hopefully, maybe we're going to start to make some changes in your diet. Maybe you're already making them. I don't know. But until they come to me, I'm not going to. That's not my. I don't want to intervene on that end, on that scale. But someone who does want to lose weight, there has to be yes, look at the weight you're putting on the bar, and let's look at your scale weight too, because that's going to be an indication of whether or not we're moving in the right direction, but also your performance in the gym matters. So if you're not doing well in the gym because you're lacking energy, we need to rethink how you're eating. What are you eating? What's going on? Are you not eating enough because you're trying to hit that number sooner? We have to try to find a balance between both things, especially once the person starts to change their nutrition habits. They might start to see, oh, well, I'm losing weight. If I can speed it up if I just start to cut X, Y, or Z out. I want to always manage that and make sure that what they're doing in the gym is that they're performing well, and that what they're doing outside the gym is not going to interfere with their performance in the gym, unless it's in a positive manner, meaning energy's there, weight's going on the bar, they can get through their workouts. They're not, passing out on me. No one's ever done that unless if they've just started deadlifting.
We had a couple.
Not from like, trying to not eat, unless they come to us and they're they've started a program, which we've had people definitely who've come and said, oh yeah, I just started my diet yesterday. I cut out all my carbs, and that's why I've passed out, from deadlifting. We don't want that. Not a good idea. So
that's pretty common. We actually see that often. I was talking to, I think it was Jay or somebody the other day, and noticed that all three of us going through this exercise here, we're talking about this very incremental ramp of increasing intervention to get this person to train and to lose weight. And that is pretty much the exact opposite of what we see. Because when people join a gym, they often do it because they've made some decision that they're out of shape and they need to get themselves in shape, right? And that usually comes along with the decision that all of their health markers are bad, and they need to get all that shit sorted out right now. So they will show up on day one to learn how to squat, press, and deadlift, but they neglect to mention that they have also decided that they have cut all the carbs out of their diet and that they are fasting 2 days a week,
right?
Because they need to lose and they're doing a juice cleanse because they decided all that stuff needs to happen right now. So it's actually not uncommon to see that on day one. We have to give people candy on day one because we get that trifecta of behavior, and we have to explain to them, it's great that you're trying to change all these, health aspects, but we got to take them one at a time.
Yeah, that's why, it's like, it's not, sort of a general idea that I have when I'm working with people. If they want to make changes like that, it's like, okay, let's make a list of 5 things, 5 goals, 5 changes, 5 nutritional, sleep habit, whatever it is. Let's list 5 things. Now choose one. Which one of those can you 100% guarantee me that you will be able to do over the course of the next week? And then if you've done the one, then the next week we can add another one. Like, you're not doing all 5 right now. Like, nobody has
because then you will do none.
Spare energy in their life.
That's that's the precision nutrition, list.
And I like that model.
I love it. That's why it's building habits. It's like drink a glass of water every day, or drink 5 glasses of water every day for 2 weeks. If you can do that, okay, we can move on to the next. And
that's why, like, you're talking about show up for the gym. That's one of those straight off the bat, right? And especially if it's like they've already written that into their calendar, they've set aside, they've made the appointment, that's half the work. It's there, they're going to show up, right? It's pretty unlikely once a person has signed up for a time slot that they're not going to.
Yeah. And the question, our gentleman, he spoke about fasting, keto, macros. He tried everything. And that's something too. Not everyone's going to lose weight in the same manner, with the same program. Like, we have a program we use for strength training. Everybody squats, you press, you deadlift, you bench. But within that program, everybody's different. Everyone's has maybe a different rep range. Maybe they're different. They're using a different implement. Maybe they're not squatting, they're using a box. Maybe, whatever it is, we have to modify and manage that. Well, same thing with eating. macros, this macros works for, some of my clients. It doesn't work for all my clients. I have to figure out what client needs what. I had a new, one of my ladies is she wants to make some changes with her eating habits. And I said, okay, we're going to start with, I needed to get 100 grams of protein, every day, start to track that because, so-and-so, it was easy for the other person and it was easy for this person. Well, after 2 weeks, I realized that wasn't working. Actually, after a week, I realized that wasn't working. I said, how's it going? She goes, I can't do that. And I realized that was not the right approach for her. So I just said, okay, give me a protein shake in the morning. And she did that for 2 weeks straight. No problem. I said, okay, now the next thing we're going to do is lunch. Okay, pick one of these 3 items to add to your salad, whatever, that you're eating, because she started to eat more vegetables. So she started to incorporate more vegetables. That was easy. So we took away the give me 100 grams and we came up with give me a protein shake, give me a salad with one of these choices here, yogurt, turkey, whatever, chicken. She said, I can do that. And she did that. So it's breaking it down almost meal by meal. And not even that, just starting with like a meal and then adding something to that meal. And all we're doing is focusing on breakfast and lunch right now. Whereas someone else, I said, eat 100 grams of protein. That's all it took. So it's you have to make sure that if you're going to work with somebody too, that they're working with you. And if something's not working, you need to tell that coach, look, this isn't sustainable for me, because there are plenty of people out there who are just going to give you a meal plan. And you've got to watch that, or tell you just to track your macros, or it's, fasting is the way to go. You have to find something that's sustainable.
Well, and I think also there's a lot of stuff that's out there that gets written about or discussed on podcasts and, things like the listener is describing, done by fit people for fit people who are trying to lose that last 2% of body fat or something like that. Okay, you might need to get tricky there and try and outsmart your body or your metabolism or whatever. But I think the majority of people, if they're trying to lose 50 or 70 pounds, you don't need a lot of bells and whistles. You don't need to be thinking about periodizing or fasting or keto or whatever. There's just some, just like starting strength pares things down to, these are the most effective big rocks that you can do in the gym, the squat, the press, the bench, the deadlift. That's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. If you do the things that we've been describing, like add more fruits and vegetables, maybe you're going to need to increase your protein. Maybe you're going to, and you don't even need to get fancy about macros and tracking calories and stuff. But if you normally eat food that fits on a 12-inch plate and you move to an 8-inch plate, just simple things like that help you reduce the caloric intake overall. You don't have to put a lot of extra thought or energy or willpower into just, I'm going to choose the salad plate and call that my dinner plate instead of the larger one. And just kind of go from there. But with the expectation, just like we've all been saying, it's going to take time. Mm-hmm. The bells and whistles and the massive weight losses that people report with following some crazy diet, it's usually water weight, or they've gone to the bathroom multiple times and eliminated. So most people will make slow progress and just set that expectation up front too. 1 to 2 pounds per week of weight loss or weight gain is healthy and sustainable. It's not a magic wand. There's no silver bullet. It takes resetting your baseline habits. And that takes time.
Yeah, you just used the word sustainable, and I think that the thing we have not, we've been talking about it, but we haven't said it out right, and that most people will not tell you because then it's not good salesmanship, is that if you want to lose weight and keep it off, you don't want to do a diet. You want to change your behavior forever. Mm-hmm. That's it. You need to turn into a different person. Mm-hmm. The person who's 70 pounds overweight is a person with a set of habits that is incompatible with being 70 pounds lighter. The person that you need to be 70 pounds lighter is going to have some overlap with the person you are now, but it's going to have some differences. And those differences are going to have to be permanent. Now, the differences for you, for me, For a person, may be different, right? But you're going to have to make permanent alterations to your behavior. Otherwise, you're going to end up back like the email writer ends up, putting the weight back on. Because if you don't change your behaviors permanently, if you just make transient changes to your behavior, you're going to make transient changes to your weight. For obvious reasons. You simply cannot do the same things that you're doing now and weigh 70 pounds less. It's just not physically possible. So you're going to have to make changes that are not just sustainable, they're permanent. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to become a different person. And that's hard. Yeah. Right? That's a difficult thing to do, and it takes a long time. Mm-hmm. Especially if those habits that got you to where you are took a long time to develop also. Mm-hmm. So that's not a good answer from a sales perspective, because I can't sell you on telling you, you know what, you will never be 70 pounds lighter, but you can turn into somebody who is.
Right.
That's not a very good sales.
Yeah, I mean, I have a client who she's lost close to over 30 pounds in just, what has it been, almost 3 months now? Maybe 2 months. And before, she was working with a dietitian outside the gym who had her counting macros. Well, that's all well and good. Eat this much protein, eat this many carbs, eat this much fat. It didn't work. I mean, she lost weight, but then it came right back. So when she finally said, we started working together, and I'd helped her in the past, it just wasn't kind of, in the right frame of mind yet to really do that. I finally got her to actually start to eat meals, right? And eating meals has made the biggest difference, because she eats consistently when she's at work now. She's a shift worker. So we created a day for her at work. She's got to eat her breakfast, lunch, and dinner between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., just like a normal person does 8 to 5 or 8 to 8, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. This is 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. That did it. Really having a consistent schedule where it was like, I have every 4 hours or so, I eat something, I eat a meal, has made all the difference in the world. There's no counting macros. There's no tracking her fats or her carbs. It's just eating meals. And they might be small meals, but they're still meals. And the 30 pounds has come off as a result. So it was just, and the training habit had already been there. That was just nothing. But this is somebody who is emotionally attached to food, and has had to learn to become a different person, as Diego was saying. Really try to figure out what makes her tick, and she knows it now. So now it's, how do I address this, and try to really separate that emotional side. And it's slow, and it's still there, but at least it's acknowledged, and it's being taken care of. The training habit's there, but the training habit had to kind of also stay consistent too, because it could get a little inconsistent at times. The more consistent she is training, the more consistent she is with her meals.
Yeah, they're reinforcing.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I think two things I was thinking of, like a person who's doing shift work and is on sort of that like reverse nocturnal schedule, like that I think is exhausting. And the amount of like willpower or additional energy that someone has to be following some kind of strict diet or something, it's just not going to be there sometimes. So to be able to turn that into something that it's a meal time. I know what a meal looks like. I don't have to put a lot of extra thought into it. My meal has, this portion, third, right? And when you get back to the precision nutrition stuff, a third of the plate is vegetable, a third of the plate is meat, a third of the plate is, or whatever you recognize that, and whatever that's the size of that plate is. But then the other thing I'm thinking about too, about tracking macros, I'm just thinking about that now in terms of, like, a lot of times, like you're both saying, if somebody is significantly overweight, and even if they're not, but like a lot of people have an emotional attachment to food, and counting macros, tracking macros, it's like an interesting mind trick, a way to just completely remove yourself from the emotional attachment to the food. Just like reconceptualize it think about it differently. But it, like Diego's saying, that's not a mindset that's going to be sustainable for someone who has a lifetime or family or cultural habits or histories of interacting with food in different ways.
That's the person.
Like when we were on vacation last week with four families, my in-laws, our family, 2 sisters-in-law and their kids, and like one of the college nephews is like just tracking his macros and, eating to gain and all of that. Like he was a certain degree removed from everything that the whole group was doing because, he prepared his meals. People went to the beach and he stayed back and cooked like ground turkey and vegetables and bagged them all up separately. It's like, we're going out to dinner and I'm eating my bag of stuff. That's like a little bit exaggerated, but like that suits his personality. He's an engineer, like somebody who wants to be part of the festivities and, whatever, like that wouldn't necessarily work for them.
I mean,
sometimes
I think
not for a long period of time.
Right.
Yeah, but that sometimes is a step along a progression for a person to learn how to eat. I think all 3 of us probably at some point have counted the, macronutrient content of our food, but I would probably wager to say that all 3 of us now can eat just by looking at our plate and know whether that's going to be conducive to weight gain, weight loss, or weight maintenance, because we've learned what we need to eat to gain, lose, or maintain. But it was a useful exercise.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a useful exercise at some point to step back, like you said, look at it, sort of reconceptualize the food a little bit, and look at it for what's in it, as opposed to meal. But I think, as you said, doing that forever may not be sustainable for most people.
No, and I shied away for a long time, not talking about that, like not talking about macros or thinking about that, or telling people that that's something, because as someone who has had a long history of a bad relationship with food, it became something else to obsess about. It can become something obsessive where you're looking at your numbers and you have to have a certain numbers. And if you don't hit those numbers, then you're bad. So it can, for somebody else, doing that can turn them into a much more obsessive person and could create an eating disorder when there wasn't one to begin with. So, not everybody can, some people can, can use that very easily and it helps them. They understand numbers. It's very easy for them to track. It doesn't take much. They like to eat, but they're not foodies. They're not emotionally attached to it. For others, it can become something of an obsession. And for some, it just doesn't work because they do like to eat and they don't want to have to think of food as protein, carbs, and fats. They just want to eat a meal. So when you have someone just eat a meal and you tell them to include some chicken in that meal and some vegetables, they're like, oh, I can do that. That's easy. So that's why the fasting, the macros, the ketos, you can't just tell, no one just tells, I never tell people how to eat. I just tell them to, get some protein in their meals, and then have some vegetables and some fruit. Nothing is ever taken out of their diet. Nothing is ever taken out of what they're eating. There's no restriction unless they decide they don't need that food anymore. Or like me, I know what I binge on. I have to not eat the gummy worms or buy them or bring them into my house because I binge on them. And that's not, something I want to continue to binge on. But I don't need gummy worms to sustain my abilities at the gym. So that, but I do need food and I do need to eat. And, I eat what I like. And I always tell people that too. Eat what you like. Don't eat foods that you don't like because you won't be able to sustain that kind of eating. If you force yourself to eat broccoli because it's, someone told you broccoli is good for, choose something else to eat.
Like what you're describing there in terms of tracking and what Diego's talking about, like a learning exercise, like the other piece I think that is really helpful in terms of tracking, not just like what your macros are, but like what your habits are over a week of eating, how you interact with food, like when do you eat more, so you're saying like, there's certain foods I know I'm going to binge on. I don't bring them into my house because they're not adding to my nutritional value. Like I know if it's 10 o'clock at night and I find myself standing in the pantry, it's not because I'm hungry, it's because I'm tired. And somehow my brain thinks like, oh, I'm tired, I need to eat more food. No, it's 10 o'clock, I need to go to bed. I should have been in bed an hour ago. Right? So like, I know that also about, so it's all of it is a learning process, but it's like sometimes learning what your habits are, things that you just do instinctively without even thinking about. And becoming more aware of that, and then changing them to become the different person, the person who's like, 50 or 70 pounds different, by recognizing what those habits are and making those changes, building on them, where you're able to and when you're able to, and then sustaining those, and then a little more.
I feel like we should probably, it's been
I'm looking at the time too.
Wrap this up.
There's unfortunately a couple of other really useful things in this email, but
I know. We need to have another podcast to talk about the rest of it.
Maybe we should, because there's at least two other really critical things in this email that deserve discussion.
I didn't think that we were going to get through all of this. I didn't think
there's a lot here.
I didn't think that we would be able to like take this.
Ooh, Diego, does that mean you're going to come back?
He's going to have to.
Lord, well, if we have to complete this response, then I guess so.
He's going to have to. Because we didn't talk about like adjusting or reassessing goals, or what success look like. That's and we can,
there are several things here.
Many things, yes,
need to be addressed.
I think this is a good start. This definitely was a good start to where does somebody go who has weight to lose, considerable weight to lose. Where do they begin? And I think we all agree that it begins with some form of resistance training and building a habit of getting to the gym and doing some type of strength training. And then after a few months of building a good training habit, now starting to reassess their eating and approach their nutrition habits, and start to eat like a grown person, as I like to say. Eating like an adult. I used to eat like a kid. I eat like an adult now. It's taken me 13 years to figure that out. So
No, it did not take you that.
It did.
You were eating like an adult. You've been eating like an adult for a long time.
Okay, fine. But it started in 2008.
Yes.
Definitely started around 2008.
So it took you from 1974 to 2008 to eat like an adult.
No, it took me from 2008 to 2015 to learn to eat like an adult. I a child all that other time. I kind of had adult moments.
This makes me feel much better, because two of my kids were in at the doctor for their sports physical, and they get asked the question about what do you eat, and it's like, I'll make a dinner. They'll get like the dinner that's the real meal, and they're describing what they eat the rest of the time, and I'm like, oh my Lord. And the doctor was like, okay, so nobody eats well.
Oh, great.
It's like, I feel like an A+ parent today.
Great. So we will we'll just have to have Diego back to discuss the rest of the
there's a lot of stuff here that's good. Some of it is going to get the answer of it depends, because a lot of it depends, right? But there's a couple things here that I'm keenly interested in the writer's issue about is increasing your strength the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I like that part too. Yeah,
yes.
That's a very important question, and I am also keenly interested in the epistemological question, right? Because he's asking, he says, I'm a smart guy with 2 biochemistry degrees and a doctorate and get batshit lost. What the heck does your average untrained person do? What is the most important thing, right? So really what he's saying is, what process should I use to ascertain the truth value of claims made by people telling me that I should do X or Y thing for training, right? I mean, that's really what he's asking, is how do I cut through the sales pitch, and how do I know whether X or Y is appropriate? So that's an epistemological question. I'm interested in those. So those to me are the two key things remaining. The rest of the stuff is going to get it depends.
Right. Right. So we need to address those two next time.
I mean, I want to address those two.
We should. No, we should. I think this is good. And this
the other stuff is, do you periodize? Do you start with this? Do you start with that? I mean, we just talked about a lot of those. Are like, I mean, whichever one works better, and try it and see what happens.
But what's the process?
And it depends.
Yeah, exactly. It depends. The answer is it depends.
Right.
And that's true because the humans are, while we're on average, very different from lemurs, we are, or chickens or
this
or
is
some
news
other
for me on a Friday.
We're different from chickens.
There's still a fair degree of variability, between them. So the things that work obviously, for one person may not work for another.
We just talked about that in regards to weight loss. I mean, how many, the people, I have three individuals, 3 women, all had to approach their weight loss differently. And that's I had to figure that out in order to help them, because if I try to give the same program to everybody, that's why cookie cutter programs. Sure.
Which goes back to what we say at our camps, and that Rebecca, I think, talked about at the beginning. It's if the person you're working with is making a a valid effort, but they're failing, then it's your fault, not theirs.
It's your fault. Exactly.
Yes. And that's true as a strength coach, as a nutrition coach, as whatever you're trying to teach the person to do.
Yep.
Obviously, if the person is completely not doing anything, then you can't be held to account. But if the person is making a valid effort and they're just not, succeeding, then you're telling them the wrong thing to do.
That's right.
Even if what you're telling them was the right thing to do for a whole bunch of other people.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. So we will have to come back to this and in a couple weeks and do another podcast. Get my husband back on.
Exciting.
All right.
Now we know how to get Diego on.
Now we have to get Diego on.
Got a really excellent question.
Got to make sure.
Don't get used to it.
So come on, everybody. Keep those questions coming in.
Send in all your epistemological questions.
I know. I was happy you could pronounce that, because I was like, epistemological.
Yeah, very carefully.
That question. You can
not when you're too close to anybody's face.
So you can find me, Emily at 5by3.com, or email Rebecca at
Cornerstone Strength Maryland at gmail.com.
So send us those questions.
Don't email me. Email Emily.
Don't email Diego. Just get Diego on. You got a good question? I will forward it to him, and he will say yay or nay. He'll be on. All right, everybody. That concludes our podcast for today. We will have part 2 in a couple weeks, so stay tuned. And thanks for giving us your time. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye. And that's how we end our show.
And that's how we end.
And that's how we do it.
Yeah, and Diego, really, you should probably say something like, "Thank you, Emily, for allowing me to be a guest on your show."
Yes, it was. Thank you, Emily. It was a privilege.
It was the privilege of my life.
Yes.
And now you're gonna have to listen to this, and you'll be like, "Oh my God, I sound like that."
I already know I don't like the way I sound.
Well, you could listen to it in double time, and you won't sound anything like yourself.
I will listen to it because
I'll sound like a chipmunk.
I've listened to every episode. I like the podcast, so no, I will have to listen.
Thanks for listening to 5by3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5by3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.